Hello, this is a video on calculating if a point is inside a triangle and two different methods for figuring that out. So this is a simple game that I made where the player has to give an answer to a question based on a triangle that's placed on the board. Now each time a triangle is created, it's procedural and the vertices of the triangle can be placed anywhere on the board. What this means is that the labeling for the sides of the triangle are not always on the same side of that vector. So if I was to create a new triangle, what is now side C here could actually be the inside of the triangle, and then the C would need to go here. If the next triangle that was created a right angle and the triangle was this way, then the C label would need to be put on this side. And I needed to figure out which side of the vector is inside of the triangle and which side is outside. So the way this is done is each side is a mesh and it's stretched out based on the requirements of the triangle, and each side of the mesh is a socket. And a calculation is done on one of those sockets to figure out if it's inside the triangle or not. If it is inside the triangle, then label the other socket. If it's not inside the triangle, then label that socket. And the tricky part of it was to figure out the calculation on, is that point inside the triangle or is it not? Jumping over to Unreal here, you can see that we've got a similar situation. We've got the triangle here and we've got a point that we want to evaluate if it's inside the triangle or not. So this is similar to the triangle game where it has the sockets and we need to evaluate if a socket is inside the triangle. So we can see here that it's green. We can move it around, it stays green. If we move it outside one of these triangle edges, it turns red, indicating that it's outside. If it's inside, it turns green. We can do the same for each edge, and it turns red when it goes outside. So now we'll look at the two methods I looked at for evaluating if the point's inside the triangle or not. So we've got a similar situation here in Desmos where there's a point, and if we move it outside the triangle, it turns red. If it's inside, it's green. The way that it does this is by using the half space method. So if I turn on this vector here, this is the perpendicular vector to AB, and it's called the half space method because it cuts the plane in half. And now that we have this perpendicular vector, we can calculate the dot product between point P and the perpendicular vector to see which side of AB the point is on. So this is a dot product here between the perpendicular vector and point P. And if these are pointing in the same direction on the y-axis, the point is assessed as being this side of vector AB. And if I bring this down towards the edge, you can see that this number is decreasing. And when it turns to a negative number, it's assessed as being outside of the triangle. And now if we extend this method for each of the edges of the triangle, which I've done here, we can assess every edge in relation to the perpendicular vector and point P. So if we want to assess edge AC, we can do the dot product between this perpendicular vector here, which is the bottom number. And as we go further towards edge AC, we can see the number is decreasing. And if I cross over that line, it turns to a negative number and the point is assessed as no longer being inside the triangle. And now this works great for this implementation. But if I was to, for example, move vertex A to the other side of BC, we can see that the point is no longer being assessed successfully if it is inside the triangle or not. So this falls apart in terms of the triangle game that I created, as the vertexes can be placed anywhere on the board when a new triangle was created. But For your purposes, if you're keeping the calculation in this anti-clockwise order, then this will work fine. But for assessing if the socket is inside the triangle for the triangle game, I needed to find another method. This brought me on to barycentric coordinates. Barycentric coordinates are used in graphics for a range of things, such as texturing, but what we're going to use it for here is finding out if P is inside the triangle or not. So first thing we need to do is find the area of the triangle itself. We can do that using the cross product and dividing it by 2. So if we do the cross product between AB and AC and divide that by 2, we get the area of the triangle, which is this number here. Now, using the cross product in the same way, we can get the area of these smaller free triangles that are inside the larger triangle. So if we do the cross product between AP and AB and divide it by 2, we get the area of this triangle here. If we do the cross product between BP and BC and divide it by 2, we get the area of this triangle here. So if the sum of all these triangles is the same as the area of the larger triangle, we know that P is either inside the triangle or on the edge of the triangle. Now, if the sum is larger than the area of the triangle, then we know that P is outside the triangle. So if we bring P outside, we can see this number is now larger, and the sum of the inner triangles is larger than the area of the larger triangle. And this also resolves the issue that we had with our half space method, where if I bring vertex A over to here, it still works as expected. This stops one step short of calculating the actual barycentric coordinate values, which describe point P's position in relation to the vertices. But that was out of scope for what I needed for this video, which is finding if the point is inside the triangle or not. Now, jumping over to Visual Studio, we can see this in code for the Unreal project. So the first bit of code calculates the vectors for the edges of the triangle. So firstly, we get the edge AB by doing sphere B minus sphere A, and so on for BC and AC. Next, we calculate the vectors between each vertex and the point that we can move around. So for AP, we have the point minus vertex A. Then we can calculate the area of the triangle, which is done by getting the cross product between AB and AC, calculating the length of that and dividing it by 2. Then we do the same for the smaller triangles that are created between each vertex and the point that we can move around. Then we do the sum of those smaller triangles, and we evaluate if the sum of those smaller triangles are greater than the area of the triangle itself. If the sum is greater, we set one material, indicating that the point is outside the triangle. And if the sum is not greater or equal to the triangle area, then we set the material to green, indicating that the point is inside the triangle. So to finish off, we can actually make some small efficiency wins here with the cross product for each of the triangles. We divide the length of the cross product by 2 for all of them, so we can just get rid of that division by 2 for each. And also, we're not actually using the vertex to point vector for vertex C, so we can just get rid of that line also. Then back in Unreal, we can see that the code that we've just implemented works as expected. If I drop the point outside the line, it turns red. If it's inside, it turns green. And then if I get the vertex and I move this over here and then up a little bit, we can see that the code still works if we move the point around inside and outside of the triangle. And that's it. Thanks for watching.